welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. If you've been with me for nearly 1,200 episodes, 5 years, you know that one of my hot buttons is education within the nonprofit sector. I am super, super excited to welcome Laura Deitrick, Executive Director of the Nonprofit Institute at the beautiful University of San Diego. Welcome, Laura.
Oh, Julia, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Super
You
excited.
know, we were chatting in the green room. You and I could like have this conversation for an 8-hour day, 5 days a week, right? I mean, this is like such a big topic. And already I can tell we need to get you back on before we've even gotten going. But we're going to be talking today about developing high impact leaders within the nonprofit workforce. Huge topic, and one that I know you know a lot about. One of the things that we know a lot about are our amazing presenting sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Fundraisers Friday, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. These are the folks that join us day in and day out and really allow us to have these amazing conversations. Again, I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. I have this amazing group of co-hosts that come from all over the country. They are all in the nonprofit sector, but they're very diverse. They do incredibly different things. And I hope you've been able to get to meet them and really gain from their wisdom. I know I have. Hey, Dr. Laura Deitrick, Executive Director of the Nonprofit Institute. I have to always say the beautiful University of San Diego.
We appreciate it.
I mean, come on now.
We're spoiled.
Oh, holy moly. If you ever get to see this campus, it is absolutely stunning. Of course, it's a campus of higher learning that is world renowned. But talk to us about the Nonprofit Institute, because this is really interesting.
Sure. Thank you, Julia. Well, first of all, I'd say if you ever get to the University of San Diego and you're a nonprofit person, please make contact, because we've been really fortunate to develop a home here at the University of San Diego, an academic home, but also a pracademic home, a place for practitioners. So we, the Nonprofit Institute, are 20 years old. We're housed within the School of Leadership and Education Sciences. So we're not tucked away in a business school or the public administration school or something like that. We get to be fully and unapologetic nonprofit, leadership focused here in what we fondly call SOULS. And the Nonprofit Institute serves a variety of purposes. We do research. We do a lot of research on the nonprofit sector, national, local, regional, statewide, with different partners. We teach. We have academic programs, masters, PhDs, and all the like, very similar, and a lot of professional development, all through the lens of social justice, equity, and practice. Really a focus on what do nonprofits need to do better work tomorrow, not 10 years from now.
Wow. So I've got so many questions for you. I mean, I'm just like so intrigued by this conversation. And as I said in the opening, one of the things that I feel like we're at a new time, a new dawn, and that is bringing educated leaders forward in our sector. Not just people of passion, not just people that have commitment, but who are educated, who can lead us in a way so we can have greater impact. And so that's a pretty exciting thing, I think, because it's somewhat of a new dawn. So back up and help us understand why we are disrupted or what that disruption maybe looks like, right?
So it's sort of the historical, you're right, we're at a historical turning point. I would say these kinds of academic programs, they were seeded initially by the Kellogg Foundation almost 20 years ago, and they've grown exponentially, due to that need. So I would say, just like everything in the world, COVID really impacted the workforce. I've been studying the nonprofit workforce for 15 years. It grows every year exponentially over the year before through the Great Recession, and some folks call it recession proof, right? And because we can't just pack up our bags and go home, right? So why is it disrupted? So COVID, right? Same disruptions that everybody felt, which led to all the tensions around remote working and what work can be done remotely. Are nonprofits technologically situated to to work remotely and to deliver services remotely. Then the Great Resignation, where everyone just leveled up as much as they possibly could. Nonprofits were flush with PPP money. I saw a lot of upward movement, like Jenga, right? Upward and around towards a movement of people moving across, to bigger jobs. Inflation. And we're in San Diego, where we have terribly high cost of living, but I think that some of these tensions exist across the country. Inflation, not being able to keep up with wages, etc. And now what we still see, even now, our most recent research, which isn't even out yet, is continued high vacancy rates and difficulty filling some, especially frontline positions where the work happens.
Right. And I think that that's one of the things that I'm hearing. I mean, it's amazing through the course of this time to see that the inquiries and the emails and even just conversations when I'm out in public, what it was looking like. And now this like frantic folks coming up to me, emailing me, calling, saying, we're losing our C-suite person, whatever. Do you have anybody that you could send me? You know what I mean? Like, can you make a connection? And it's just a frightening thing, actually, to hear continuously. And so it is a state of the marketplace, if you will. Let's talk about this in terms of attracting that talent. If everybody's experiencing this silver tsunami, the Great Resignation, changes in demographics of actual labor, what do we do, and what are the challenges of attracting talent that we desperately need?
Well, it's kind of funny. So one of the newest findings that we have, again, unpublished quite yet research, but I'll sneak peek it here, is that nonprofit folks, when we survey them, they don't want to leave. They want to stay. They're not sitting there dreaming about their big corporate job that they're just waiting to jump to. They want to stay in this sector. So how do we retain that talent, right? And I think the first thing we all have to recognize, and people outside the sector need to recognize, is that we have, it's a really hard place to work. It's a really hard place to be a leader because of, metrics are hard to measure, success metrics, multiple people wanting different things from you at any given point in time. People who pay for the services aren't the people that get the services. So all those tensions, I think, make it a super exciting place to be a leader. But also, I think that people just think it's easier, but it's not. So there's these misconceptions and myths. I'd also say I think we as a sector need to think bigger and stop apologizing for the fact that we have talent and that we pay for talent, right?
Wow, okay. That's a hair on fire moment.
Yeah, I'm gonna lay it down for you.
I love that statement. Okay, yeah, keep going, sister.
We don't think big enough, and it's not just about salary, right? Like, oh, we just don't pay enough. It's definitely about who are the people we need to carry out this very technical work, oftentimes, right? Lifting people out of poverty is not, something that you just come born innate with, right? Putting on fantastic arts and culture endeavors does not, require the least, bit of education. You have to be an expert, right? So first of all, you need this expertise. And I think we just apologize consistently for the fact that we're nonprofits, and that limits us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I'm speechless, which, if that happens very rarely. But
you're hilarious.
No, I just think that it's like a psychosis that we have across our sector. And I love that you brought this up, because I think it is a leadership issue. Ultimately,
Sure.
It's a self-esteem issue. It's how we see ourselves. It's how others see us. And if we don't start waving our own banner, then somebody else does, right? And then we just subsume to that lowest sense of, oh, well, you must do it for, peanuts, or volunteer, or, you couldn't get a job elsewhere.
If you ask somebody if they work in a nonprofit, what's the answer? I mean, somebody says, oh, you work in a nonprofit. What do they say? They say, oh, that's so nice of you.
Right.
Oh, how do you, good luck paying your mortgage with that. It's so nice. Right. So, but yeah, and it would be fine if the work didn't require top talent. Right. But it does. And we don't recognize that. Right. And the other thing I would say, Julia, is that the career ladders are not clear. People don't, because we think about it, we call it a sector that people don't recognize. And
Yeah.
so, when you're in your bunk bed as a young kid dreaming about what you're going to be, you don't go, I think I'm going to be a nonprofit professional. That's what I think I'm going to be. Right.
I
And
know.
so we have, and
Yeah.
everyone who cares about the sector have to really work at and think about how we connect those career pipelines and help people understand that this is a viable place to make a great living,
Right.
to do good and to do good and to thrive.
Right. To do good and to do well. I think it's like a really important thing. And I'm excited because I think that this workforce is developing, and it is something that, I mean, when I was in college, there was no education a path that you could
No.
learn about this. You would be like, well, you're going to go into business classes and hopefully learn some basic business and then maybe use that. But more importantly, or not more importantly, but generally, you were seeing people that were being educated in, the social services
Social workers.
area, that kind of, yeah, social work. And then bless their hearts, they're being dumped into the business world, right? The nonprofit business world. And so super tough to take those talents and those skills to change them out. So I really appreciate you kind of helping us to understand this, because it certainly is a changing target. Let me ask you about peer learning. I mean, you run a program, and there are so few programs across this country. They're growing, and I love that you shared with us how this has kind of started, but still it's in its infancy. Talk to us about peer learning, because this is one of the things that I get concerned about, is the isolation that leaders have. And I think that is something that just creates disengagement, burnout. So talk to us about what you're seeing there, Laura.
Yeah, all of that and more. So what I would, you and I've never met, but we're very much like-minded in the sense
Yeah.
that I always start with, I think it's also, if you're in that executive space, really lonely work. So you said isolating, right? But you really don't have a peer, right?
Right.
So the peer learning, what I'll tell you about having 15 years experience doing peer learning, not only in formal education, but we do everything in peer cohort learning, professional development, certificates that we do across the country that are not credit bearing. Because here's what's happened. I mean, I know it's a secret thing, right? But they get that outcome from that peer learning is just as good as any of the knowledge that I teach.
Wow.
Because learning you're not alone.
Yes.
Learning you can call somebody and you have colleagues for life. Learning that you're not, losing it, like is so. I mean, repeatedly on evaluation after evaluation that we do is so almost equally as important as the book learning, and we know that. And then peer learning can also be intergenerational. So I can have somebody with, $95 million budget in a class with somebody who's fresh out of undergrad, right? And there's a huge differential between them. But I'm going to tell you, they always both seem to find something to learn from the other.
I love that. Now that actually, I've got to say, gives me hope, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because that's how we can strengthen our sector and move forward with leadership.
Yeah.
And so that's a cool thing to hear. Are you finding that these younger leaders, I mean, you said something that was pretty magical, that the folks in our sector don't want to leave. Are you finding that when these younger leaders are more educated or armed with this knowledge, that they have a trajectory that's going to last longer?
I don't know about last. I would say yes, if they've made that investment in really nonprofit specific education, right? Most of our folks are moving up. There, many have become CEOs around the San Diego region from our master's program. I think that definitely an issue that comes into play a lot of times is that people will say, like boards and whatnot, will say, well, we don't want to support that professional development because then they're just going to leave. And that it's another issue, right? The sector is really flat. Most organizations have fewer than 10 employees. So the career ladders and the career trajectory has to be made really evident to folks.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. And I think that a lot of organizations they haven't done any planning. They don't even know themselves what to think about, or, boards are just, learning about succession planning and understanding the silver tsunami that's coming. And it's shocking, Laura, how many are not prepared.
Well, I'll tell you, the first study I ever did, which was almost 20 years ago, was on the baby boomers retiring, right? And then they never did. But now it's happening. So,
Yeah.
we had the recession, then they never did. It is happening now, and the next generation is smaller.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a real competition for talent, and how we bring those folks along and mentor them along is equally important. So the ones that I think are doing well are the ones that recognize that and are really investing in. We're doing some work with Catholic Charities USA across the country, for example, and we do stuff with their CEOs, and then we instituted a small sort of like boot campy kind of thing for the next aspiring.
Wow.
Right? So they could see. So they all present. Every one of us. I was an executive director. Like, how did I become an executive director? Somebody quit. I was pretty good at fundraising, and so I became the executive director of this little nonprofit a long time ago. And I had gaps. We all present with gaps because running a nonprofit is different than running a business.
Right. And you probably didn't come fully formed with an education in nonprofit management, right? So I mean, you could it's almost tragic how we put all of this pressure on these leaders, and yet we haven't brought them into the workforce with the tools that they need. Now it's changing and it's really exciting and there are opportunities, but wow, I mean, 20 years ago, what a tough thing. It's amazing you stuck it out.
Well, it's fun. I get to live vicariously through, I mean, some days I'm, an arts person, some days I'm a human services person. So it's selfish of me. It's my privilege to sit in the place that I do. I would say that I think that, we have to understand that the sector is different and it should be different.
Right.
The one thing I would caution us about in terms of this development and these programs that are burgeoning is teaching too normatively, right? The sector has always had a critical eye on and been a critical friend of the other sectors and what is going on in the world and a voice for the people that don't have voices. So, we want to just be really careful that we're not saying, do these 10 things and you are now okay. Right. Yeah. So we also need to be teaching leadership skills, critical thinking, and the like, because otherwise I just get a little worried when I see people say, do this 4-quadrant model and you'll be good.
Right.
Right. So we want to keep that critical eye.
Yeah. And I think this is, me and my soapbox. This is not a trade school, right? I mean, this is higher ed where we are instructing on thought leadership and how to navigate the things that are coming at us, because change is the only consistent thing that a leader will come up against, right? And so it's not just task oriented. We can't just understand task management. We have to understand, how to problem solve and think and lead. So let's navigate to the next kind of question that I have for you. And I want to spend a little bit more time with you on this, because you said something that it gave me the chills, and that was that boards are like, well, we don't want to invest in that because they'll just go on down the road and get a job with someone else, right? I mean, so
well, I know nonprofit leaders that say that too.
Yes.
I mean, so yeah.
True.
So it's unfortunate, right? I mean, I'll have students apply and they'll be like, well, my boss doesn't really think it's a good year for me to come right now. And I'm like, your boss has a master's degree. So they did that investment for themselves. Right. So I don't see that often, but we have to take that up as a sector. Right. So the investing in the career development, I mean, again, maybe I'll give you goosebumps again. So, everyone will start with, funders need to help invest in professional development. Yeah, sure. Of course, funders need to help with that. And they are doing that. Right. Mm-hmm. However, it's got to start with the board. Mm-hmm. Right. Whenever I look at a board that complains about wages or whatnot, or the people who can't pay people, I'm like, you can do whatever you want. You're the board. Figure out what you want to invest in. If this is important to you, you'll invest in it. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it's really at the board level, and the CEO plays a role in that. Right. The CEO can set an agenda with the board to say, we can't offer benefits now, but can we in 3 years, right? Or we can't afford to cover all of their professional development, but we could do this, right? But first of all, you have to have a conversation about it. I think that the other place that people need to kind of think about investing is in that mid-level, right? I think there's a lot of opportunity for leaders. So the way I've seen it work really nicely, I have a nice partnership here in San Diego. I've had a nice partnership with over the years with a group called MAC, and their CEO, I remember, he put 80 of his middle managers through a training we designed for them, right? And he said, I know that some of them are going to leave. I know some of them are going to leave. He goes, and that's okay. He goes, because we're building a sector, we're building an ecosystem. And sure enough, several of his folks have been promoted up, are now running other nonprofits. And guess what they're all doing together? They're all fighting poverty together, right? They are, and they're collaborating. So I see this time and time again, when there's a commitment from the organization, then that's what has to come first.
Yeah. I always feel like, you send these missionaries out and then they come back to you, right?
Oh, well, the person I'm talking about went away and came back as the CEO. And because organizations are flat, they will have to go somewhere else to move up the career ladder, most likely. And then they'll come back. Right.
Yeah.
So, it happens all the time.
Yeah. And I think it's okay for us to understand that, right? And not see it as a punitive action.
No, we have to be in it for we have to be in it for the whole sector, for the ecosystem.
Right.
And a lot of times they'll stay, people want to be developed as human beings. And so when you can't offer them, other things, you can offer them opportunities to grow and learn.
Right.
So,
So talking about that growth, Dr. Deitrick, how do we think about, like, it's the end of the year right now, people are working on their goals, thinking about the future. We always have a new year, start of a new year, with a lot of hope and anticipation. So I feel like this is a discussion that people are having right now, maybe not within their organizations, but maybe just, internally. What should we expect for the cost of pursuing this type of education? And I'm not just talking about tuition. I'm talking about commitment of time, all of the pressures that come with pursuing this, because chances are these students are going to be returning students, right? They're going to have to relearn how to learn in this modern time.
Yeah, well, a couple of things that you brought up there are really interesting. So, first and foremost, if you're talking sort of about formal education, guess what? Higher ed is just as disrupted as the nonprofit sector, right? Students don't want to come to campus 14 weeks, 3 nights out of the week, right? They want hybrid, high flex opportunities. They want online, but they also still want to be together, right? So we're looking at our programming really closely to say, and doing some surveying, and people are like, yeah, we'd like to come for an intensive, like 2 days every other month or something, and then meet on Zoom and kind of really shake it up. So we have to really be able to meet the needs of the folks that we're serving, and it can't be from 6 to 9 at night, 3 nights a week anymore, right? Childcare and all the things. On the flip side, what we really need are employers to see that time. And I think when you're selecting a program, if you're selecting an academic program, look at one that can benefit your organization, right? So our students, for example, they can work on, if they're in a fundraising class, they can work on a fundraising plan for their own organization. If they're in a governance class, they can rewrite the bylaws for their organization. So it's a win-win. So we're always looking at our education opportunities, capacity building for our local sector at the same time. So can they really work on applied work? Whatever program they pick, I would really look for some kind of, not just even capstone, but some kind of applied work, because it's a win-win-win, right? So I think that those kinds of things are really, incumbent on the education programs. And, the other thing is, those universities who want to invest in these things, we have special tuition. Our university made that commitment, right? And we have to raise a lot of scholarship dollars because people can't, sort of make it real, to make it. And a lot of universities, that's part of our living into our values as a Catholic institution, for one, is to really be community minded and to try and to expect people not to pay the rate of an MBA per se, because that's unaffordable. I mean, it's unaffordable for most people. So
Wow, I love that. I think that's incredible advice, no matter where you're looking at. And I love some of these concepts that you brought forward that will kind of help us shop, if you will. We're
yeah,
looking to get this. Like, what should we be looking for when we're, if you will, shopping this commitment? Because
yeah,
it's so important, and it's not the same. And I love that you were, really transparent that it's a changing time, right? The
yeah,
way that we're doing this is
yeah,
changing. The
yeah,
technology is changing.
yeah.
Wow.
What the consumer wants is different,
Yeah.
right? And the other thing I'll tell you that's interesting about nonprofit work is it's kind of interesting, and we're working on adjusting to this a little bit as well. Is not surprisingly, the workforce is like 75% women, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of these women fall into this work. Some of them do not have college degrees. So
Yeah.
then to get into a graduate program becomes challenging.
Right.
So I'm fortunate I have an amazing dean, and we're really kind of working on these pathways for people who are VPs of major nonprofits, and they have this almost kind of hidden shame that they never finished college for whatever reason, because they were the breadwinner in their family or first generation, etc. So you
Sure.
have to acknowledge that that's the workforce, and how do we help them attain education so it's not just for an elite few, right?
Right. Wow. That's riveting, because that just opens the door to more talent and more
Yes,
dedicated talent.
yeah. I'll just say one thing. I was at a was doing a 6 week. We have a 6 session long training program that we're doing with this particular group, and this young lady came up to me, and they're a really small community based nonprofit, which are, you know, near and dear to all of our hearts. And she said to me, "I just want you to teach me everything about nonprofit management." And in my head, I'm like deflated, because that cannot happen in 6 weekend sessions. That is a deeper commitment to a master's degree, most likely.
Right.
You can
Right.
go get all the training you want, but at the end of the day, maybe you should package it all together and think
Mhm.
about a soup to nuts degree program kind of thing, if that's where
Right.
you really want to go. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think it's a, as you alluded to when we first started chatting, it's a changing time. If you and I had this conversation 5, 8 years ago, it would have looked completely different because of
Mhm.
different things that have occurred that are forever impacted the sector. And so you have to be, it kind of goes back to our earlier conversation. You have to learn how to think and how to evaluate, because it's not just a trade school kind of position, right? It's not task
It's
management.
it's the people work. It's all the stuff you learn in leadership. It
Yeah.
I don't want to say soft skills, but I'm going to say it's in that, essential skills, right? I'm going to say essential skills in that place. Managing a board, right? If you're the CEO, a lot of people progress up to that position and they've never done that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then takes a good couple of years to figure, if you haven't really been able to think it through. And the
Right.
face of governance is changing. How people
Oh,
want to
yeah.
govern these organizations. There's all these new models. So it's an exciting time, I think. And you
I
talk about
think
hope and planning. I'm excited for the nonprofit sector right now.
good. Well, we're excited to have you in our nonprofit sector. Dr. Laura Deitrick, Executive Director of the Nonprofit Institute. As I said at the opening, the beautiful University of San Diego, truly one of the most beautiful campuses in America, certainly in the West Coast, but doing great work, work of value and service, and really opening this up to so many of us in the nonprofit sector. We need leadership, we need education, and we need to increase the professionalism of our entire sector. And so that's what Dr. Laura Deitrick and her team are working on. Really exciting times. We need to have you come back on. You mentioned in the green room, and you briefly mentioned during the show, that you are an institution of research and doing a lot of, uh, you know, thought leadership yourself. And that's something that I think on the nonprofit show, we're always very interested in, because it helps kind of lead us forward across the sector. 1.8 million registered nonprofits across this country doing amazingly different things, yet all trying to do it, to their best capacity. And so this has really been fun. Dr. Laura Deitrick, check out check them out at sandiego.edu /nonprofit, and you can learn more about what their leadership looks like, how they teach. Before we let you go, I'm fascinated that you and your team have developed, it sounds like, programs for organizations. You mentioned Catholic Charities.
Mhm.
That's riveting that you do that.
It's really fun. Um, yeah, it helps them. I mean, they might not be able to invest in a whole master's degree kind of program, but
Yeah.
yeah, the visions of people come to us, and we just work it out with them what they would like to see for their organization.
I love
Yeah,
it.
it's a
I
lot of
love it.
fun.
Well, this
It's
has been great. Thank you so much for joining us. We I feel like we're going to have some more conversations with you and your team.
to start on Monday, and the best of the holiday season to all of you, and thank you for your commitment to the sector.
Oh,
Absolutely.
thank you. It's a joy. We have amazing presenting sponsors that allow us to be here every day. As I mentioned, we're going to end the last show of 2024 is our 1200th episode. It just kind of worked out that way, which is bizarre. But we have these amazing sponsors, and they really allow us to do this. And they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Fundraisers Friday, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. What a great conversation. We will be chatting with you more, my new friend.
Oh, thank you so much. All the best.
It's been a lot of fun. Hey, everybody, as we end each and every episode, we leave with this mantra, and it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well. Thanks, everyone.